Microneedling in 2021. Is this something we should be doing? Is it a yay or a nay? There seems to be a little bit of controversy around this subject. We have two camps. We have the camp that is like, let's hamburger up the face, let's microneedle at 2 or 2.5, and that's the only way you're ever going to get collagen. You need a lot of blood, and that's how you're going to end up with, anti-aging. Then we have the other camp that is, no, you should never microneedle at home. It is extremely risky. You could cause an infection and it could kill you. Okay, we have these two sides. The truth about microneedling, of course, is somewhere in the middle of those two things and where I fall. And that is, yes, it is risky and you should definitely take the proper precautions. And no, you should not be needling at those depths. But what you should be doing is a less is more approach, because science actually backs that up. Science actually says, hey, there are case studies that actually show that when we needle at a shallow depth consistently over time, we actually get some reduction of fine lines and wrinkles. We get an improvement in our tone and our texture, and it's actually really worth doing. As this modality and the study of this modality evolves, we're finding new information. We started this journey with Des Fernandez decades ago, and he initially discovered, if you will, microneedling. And he's basically the pioneer of microneedling. And the deal with it back then was deep needling yielded collagen formation. And it definitely was like an aha moment. And what has happened in the years since that, there have been new experts on the field, like Dr. Lance Setterfield, who you guys have heard me refer to many times. And they have found that actually you don't have to go that deep at all. And they found that not only through their own anecdotal evidence, experience, and observations, but they found that through case studies and things like they do 1.5 millimeter depths and they do 0.5 depths. And lo and behold, no more collagen is formed at 1.5 than at 0.5. Things like that start to tell you there is no need to go that deep. You just don't have to, and your risk goes up the deeper you go into the skin. So for me in 2021, the answer is heck yeah, microneedling is an absolutely fantastic modality, but as Dr. Setterfield or the industry itself is evolving, so am I, and my philosophy has always been less is more, but I'm even more. Less is more. You're going to hear a lot more about cosmetic needling on this channel. You're going to hear a lot more advocacy for shallow needling, because this evidence that exists says, yeah, it's a little slower. Your results are going to come along a little bit slower than if you went in at medical depths. When you are needling at cosmetic depths, you have a low risk of local infection and you have a low risk of systemic infection. Whereas when you go in at deeper depths, yes, there is a risk of infection. There definitely are many other risks that come along with that. You also need to be a self-advocate and understand that if you get cold sores, maybe you need to look into whether microneedling is even for you or not. If you have an immune deficiency, should you be microneedling? You have to determine if you're a good candidate for microneedling. You essentially need to fill out your own questionnaire as to whether you are a good candidate for microneedling. And that's important. If you went into a doctor's office, they would give you an assessment form and they would go through a consultation with you and they would determine whether or not you should actually get microneedled. Now, if you're going to do this at home, you need to fill that questionnaire out for yourself and determine that before you ever put pen to your face. It's really important. There are 5 things that I think are ultimately the steps or the things that you need to check off your list and understand, acknowledge in order to move on with microneedling. Number 1 is you need to understand how to have a hygienic protocol before, during, and after microneedling. I did do a video where I went through all of that. I'm going to link it in the description box. It is just simply demonstrating for you how to create a really sanitary environment, how to not touch your face, what you can do to keep your area clean, and just all of the things that go along with something that would happen in office, how you bring that home. Because every single person who endeavors on microneedling needs to also be committed to a sanitary environment. The second thing that you need to know, check off your list here, is that you have the appropriate tools and that you know the depths that you want to go and that you're using the right hyaluronic acid. Those are all the tools in your toolbox. So do you have a pen that you can adjust the depths? Because all pens that I've ever used, you can adjust the depths and decide if you want to go 0.25, if you want to go 0.5, or if you want to go deeper. Most pens, you actually dial the depth and the cartridge moves, the needles move. So that is how you determine the depth that you're doing. You need to understand where those depths, where they go in the skin and what they affect in the skin and their corresponding risk, whether it's deeper and that's more of an infection risk or it's more shallow, lower risk, and what kind of topicals you can use with both. It is really, really important that you know that. In a nutshell, the deeper you go, the less you can use, the less often you can do it. The shallower you go, the more you can use, the more often you can do it. It's pretty cut and dry that way. The third thing that you need to know is the correct post-needling protocol. I do have an extensive blog post on the serums that you can use in the 28 days after microneedling, and I get really specific as to what is just the best practices for things to put on right after you microneedle, the next day, 2 weeks later, the whole thing. I also have a free printable 7-week rolling calendar so that you can map out when you want to be microneedling so that you don't ever do it too often, because any of the deeper depths definitely back off on the frequency. So mapping it out might help you to remember, hey, I got to keep that far apart in order to not cause too much inflammation. And also, I don't want to interrupt the collagen cycle. I want my skin to just do its thing. The fourth thing is just that. It's about frequency. So you need to understand how often you should be microneedling. You need to understand the correlation between the depth that you're doing and how often you can do it. And if you don't understand that yet, then you shouldn't be microneedling. Now, the last thing is to understand adding in other modalities. It's really, really important to understand that I know we have all of these tools at our disposal now at home. I have tons of at-home devices, but what's really important with microneedling is that you understand that it's pretty much a standalone modality. It's pretty much a standalone device when it's done at deeper depths. You can always complement it with LED, but it's really, really good to lay off the other modalities when you microneedle. You will see that my advice over and over and over is just let your skin be, let your skin heal, let it do its thing for at least 10 days. That's because microneedling by itself is an amazing modality. You don't need to add in a bunch of other things. You can do some other things after, but in the moment that you microneedle, I suggest microneedling and LED and calling it good. And that is the perfect pairing without complicating it with a bunch of other modalities, without saying, well, could I do a high frequency treatment plus an RF, then could I microneedle and then LED? You don't really need to do all that. Less is more. That is my philosophy in 2021, and it has been an evolving philosophy. Less is more when it comes to microneedling. On this channel this year, you're gonna hear a lot more protocols that advocate for cosmetic needling, and that is 0.3 millimeters or more shallow. I'm actually going to talk a lot more about cosmetic needling than I am medical needling, because what happens is when we cosmetically needle, we eliminate risk or we lower the risk greatly. We increase our options for topicals and all of the fun stuff that we can do with the cosmetic needling. And also we are kind of lowering or if not eliminating the risk of developing scar collagen over the long term, because that is definitely a risk with this super, super deep needling. We don't recognize it right away, but what's happening is we've induced a bunch of inflammation and collagen, right? Let's say you're needling at 1.5 or 2. Well, you don't realize it, but that scar collagen, it takes a lot of time to form. Before you know it, 5 years from now, you realize that you really just induced a bunch of the wrong kind of collagen. I don't want that to be you. I don't want that to be me. And like I've said forever, less is more. And microneedling in 2021 is a huge yes. I'm going to link a ton of stuff in the description box. I encourage you to check out Dr. Lance Setterfield. I encourage you to check out his interviews and listen to him. He is an expert in the field, and he even says that he is evolving, that what he knew 10 years ago, he knows so much more now, and it's changed and it's evolved, and that's awesome. You should also check out his book, Dermal Needling. It is one of the best books, aesthetic books I've ever read. I also recommend not to just listen to people on YouTube. Be your own self-advocate. Research it. Research the studies. See what you think is good for you. Fill out a questionnaire. Am I a good candidate? Before you ever do microneedling at home. And most importantly, trust your gut as far as who to listen to. If you think somebody really doesn't know exactly what they're talking about, don't take their advice. Research for yourself. It's super important. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. The nutshell statement here is, heck yeah, microneedling is definitely a thing to do in 2021. Science says so. We know it. We have case studies. Most people would agree on it. And we just have to be self-advocates, safe, and research for ourselves. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you in my next skincare video. Take care.